Good morning. Don Calloway sitting in for the great Crystal Ball. Here with my brother Saagar Enjeti.
That's
Happy
right.
Friday.
Happy Friday. We got the Bro Show today with Don. We have a very interesting stuff. We have got Bob Cusack, Over the Hills editor-in-chief. We've got Robbie Suave from Reason.com to talk about Josh Hawley's new social media addiction bill. That one will be interesting. And always, 2020 debate discussion. All that coming up today on Rising.
It is Friday, August 2nd. We've had a huge week in our universe. Saagar, what's on your radar?
Man. Well, I'm thinking about the truth about Barack Obama. Yesterday, we talked about how Bernie Sanders has already won the Democratic nomination if it comes to shifting the narrative. But implicit in that is a huge critique of the former president. There is a massive Democratic reckoning happening right now with the former president's legacy. We see his former enforcers, Rahm Emanuel, David Axelrod, aghast that the Democrats are moving too far left because Obama looked a lot like George W. Bush on the stage of the second Democratic debate, everybody rushing to criticize his record. But his former vice president, Joe Biden, was the only person who did defend him. Let's take a listen to what he said.
I must tell you, I was a little surprised at how much their incoming was about Barack, about the president. I mean, I'm proud of having served with him. I'm proud of the job he did. I don't think there's anything he has to apologize for.
First of all, it's cringeworthy that he calls him Barack and continues to emphasize his close relationship to the former president because that seems to be all that he's actually running on in this debate. Broadly, it shows that there are two choices in this primary. There's Joe Biden, and then there's the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. It is Obama neoliberalism of 2012 versus Joe Biden. Now, right now, Joe Biden does have a plurality whenever it comes to supporting the Democratic Party. But implicit in the support of all those other candidates is that President Obama failed, is that neoliberalism after 40 years failed us. And we tried to tell you. That's what 2016 was all about. That's why Hillary Clinton lost the White House. It wasn't just because she was a historically terrible candidate. It's because the legacy and the actual policies and the vision on which she was running on is a complete and total failure. Barack Obama came to this city in order to break it up and to change it. And he ended up becoming one of the worst products of it. So, Don, I mean, frankly, I don't really mind seeing all of this happening over on the Democratic side. There's quite a bit of Schadenfreude, honestly, but I mean, it's like, oh, great, Rahm Emanuel's very upset, but look, what it really comes down to, in my view, is that everybody liked President Obama, the man. He was one of the most talented politicians of the age, but as an actual executor of policy, he was terrible.
False.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I'm going to go ahead and say that.
Please.
First of all, what a critique. I always appreciate your perspective.
Yeah.
This is not a circular firing squad, as they say. What you saw from the left on the debate stage was a reasoned, mindful critique of the president.
Yeah.
Was he a good manager? Sure. Was he a good policy guy? Sure. But he could have gone further, and there are some reasonable areas to critique. This is much different than the critiques you saw from the right. He's a Kenyan. He's a socialist.
Yeah, that was wrong, and it was terrible.
So this, to me, is a non-starter. It's not a big of a story. It's a reasonable critique of some things that he could have done different. And frankly, you have to draw the distinction between yourself and what you would do versus what the president did.
I think it's about a vision of change and the visionary of change. So President Obama, the Hope and the Change 2008 message did not mesh with the proceduralist that we ultimately saw that entered the White House. And that was the main critique of him from the left, from the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. And now you see Bernie and Warren saying, look at what President Obama did. He tried to strike all these deals. He tried to do this, this, and that. None of it worked. Ultimately, it was in a false narrative that we can work within the proceduralist restrictions of Washington to actually get this stuff done.
Well, there's no doubt.
That's why people support Bernie. That's why people support Trump.
There's no doubt that the legacy of Bernie Sanders is that win or lose, if he ever sits in the Oval Office or not, he will have pushed the party demonstrably left. And there are candidates coming up in his mold. There's no doubt about that. But I don't take that with such animus towards President Obama. I think it says that President Obama took us this far, and now we can go even further.
I think it's actually good for the Democrats because this is very much reminds me of what it was like, having to deal with the Jeb Bushes and the George W. Bushes whenever Trump was running, because it was like They were terrible politicians. They were terrible governors. They pushed this country into dramatically bad things. And just because he had an R next to his name, we were all supposed to shut up and say he was okay. It was like with Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney was a disaster. He was a terrible candidate.
Well, he was a manager.
Trump,
he would have been a manager. There was no big vision there.
You're absolutely right. And Trump was finally the one who said it.